Good morning. So, today's class is about the different lobes of the cerebrum, its functions, and its applied aspects. That is what will happen if there is a damage, if there is a lesion in the specific area. So, as we all know that the cerebrum is divided into the different lobes: the parietal, the frontal, occipital, temporal, and the limbic lobe. So, this is the diagram showing the different lobes of the cerebrum. You can see here the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and the limbic lobe. So, the parietal lobe lies between the central sulcus and the parieto-occipital sulcus. So, between these two sulcus, the area of the cortex, we call it as the parietal lobe. So, this lobe is mainly concerned with the sensory function, because the somatosensory area 1 and 2 is located in this area. That is, the somatosensory area 312 lies in the parietal lobe, and then the secondary sensory areas, that is the somatosensory 2, is present in the parietal lobe. Apart from this, we have another important areas present over here, that is area 5, 7 and 40. So, we know that the somatosensory area is responsible for the sensory functions, all sensations, that is the touch, pain, temperature, tactile localization, tactile discrimination of all the parts of the body, that is from the opposite side, that relays here in the parietal lobe. So that is a function of somatosensory area. Whereas apart from this, we have area 5, area 7 and area 40. So area 5, this is present behind the somatosensory area 1. Area 5 and 7, that is, this is present posterior to the somatosensory 1, and this contains the neurons which react to the passive or active rotation of a joint. So this is the function of this area 5, which is present behind the somatosensory area 1 and is responsible for the passive or active rotation of a joint, and this it's also respond to tactile stimuli. It receives mainly afferents from the neurons of areas 1 and 2, which themselves are excited by joint and deep tissue receptors via thalamic relays. So like other areas, this also is having point to point representation. So that is about area 5. So next we have area 7. So this is located in the superior parietal lobule, deep into the intraparietal sulcus, extending close up to the occipital lobe, and this is associated with the more elaborate process of discrimination between the stimuli. So this area is mainly responsible for the discrimination between the stimuli. So this about the area number 7, and then we have area 40. So this is present in the supramarginal gyrus, and this is responsible for the stereognosis. So area number 40 is for the stereognosis. So apart from this area number 5 and 7 receive inputs from the somatosensory 1 and then ventrobasal nucleus of the thalamus, visual and auditory cortex. And then this somatosensory area 1 and 2 we learned in the previous class, that is somatosensory area 1 is 312. It is present in the postcentral gyrus, and how the body parts are differently represented, that is called the sensory homunculus. And then what will happen if there is removal? There will be loss of sensations of opposite sides of the body. So all these things, so this diagram also explained in the last class. So this is somatosensory area 2. So this also I explained in the last class. So next we'll go to the functions. So the functions of parietal lobe is, the first function is appreciation of the primary senses. Okay, that is the touch, pain, temperature, then the joint movements. So all these are the appreciation of the primary senses. And then discrimination of the stimuli. So this is one of the function of the parietal lobe. And then stereognosis, that is ability to recognize the known objects with the eyes closed. So that is one of the function of the parietal lobe. And then the recognition of spatial relationships. So that is the tactile localization and the tactile discrimination. That is, the tactile localization means the subject should able to localize the point where it is stimulated, the area of the skin. So you should be able to localize the point of stimulation. So that is tactile localization. Whereas tactile discrimination means, so that is the subject should able to discriminate the two closely lying objects as separate. So when you are stimulating the two areas, so he should able to discriminate it as separate. So that is called tactile discrimination. So all these are functions of the parietal lobe. And the last function is the integration of the general auditory and visual sensory signals. So these are the functions of the parietal lobe. So now you know what will happen if there is a damage. So if there is partial lobectomy, so what will happen? And if there is unilateral lobectomy, or if there is bilateral removal of the parietal lobe, bilateral removal of the post central gyrus, so what will happen? These things will study in the applied aspect. So partial lobectomy, that is if you remove only one side, so what will happen? So removal of the parietal lobe on one side, it causes loss of perception of fine touch and proprioception. So that is the first thing which is affected. So proprioception and fine touch will be lost. And then the loss of tactile localization and the tactile discrimination. And then loss of control over the voluntary movements. And then that is called the ataxia, sensory ataxia, and uselessness of muscles on the opposite side. So all the sensations which are of the opposite side will be lost. Usually the proprioception and fine touch are most affected, and then the tactile localization, tactile discrimination will be lost. So because of the sensory loss, you will see loss of control of the voluntary movements, so that is called sensory ataxia. And then it may undergo, there will be uselessness of the muscles on the opposite side, and loss of the temperature sense as well. So these are all the things which happens when there is partial lobectomy. And then you will see amorphosynthesis, which I explained in the last class only, and constructional apraxia and astigmatia. So all these things, this will be present in the partial lobectomy. Constructional apraxia, that means inability to copy the designs or objects. So that is called constructional apraxia. Apraxia means inability to perform organized movement in the absence of paralysis. So that is called apraxia. So constructional apraxia means inability to copy the designs or objects. So that will be present in the partial lobectomy. Amorphosynthesis I explained in the last class only. And then we'll see what will happen if there is bilateral removal of the post central gyrus. So that is area number 312 and 5. So main somatosensory area, primary somatosensory area will be affected. So what will happen? Initially visual placing is retained, but tactile placing is completely lost. However, recovery is slow, and therefore with eyes closed, the subject's hand and foot are inactive to tactile stimulation. So that will happen in bilateral removal of the postcentral gyrus. So in this, if the upper lip of the Sylvian fissure is also removed, so it avoids responses to touch, that is withdrawal reflexes are exaggerated and explosive. So these are the things present in the bilateral removal of post central gyrus. So next we'll see the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe we already learnt during the descending tracts, that is it's mainly responsible for the motor function. So the frontal lobe is mainly responsible for the motor function, and it lies in front of the central sulcus. The major areas present here are the motor cortex and the premotor cortex, and also the prefrontal cortex. So the motor cortex is already dealt, and I will be telling about the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal lobe, so this is also called orbitofrontal region. This lies anterior to the motor areas 4, 6 and 8. So the major areas of the prefrontal lobe are Brodmann's areas 9 to 13, and then 24, 32 and 44 to 47. So these are the major areas which are present in the prefrontal lobe. So areas 9 to 12, they lie in superior frontal gyrus and also extend on the adjacent medial surface of the hemisphere. So you should know the anatomy of the cerebral cortex. Then area 13 lies in the orbital part of the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. So all these things you should know where these areas are present. And then area 32 in the cingulate gyrus. So area 44 to 47 present in the inferior frontal gyrus. So this is about the prefrontal lobe. So next we'll see the connections of the prefrontal lobe. So the connections of the prefrontal lobe, so afferents, so this fibers from the dorsomedial nucleus of the thalamus. So from the fibers from the dorsomedial nucleus of the thalamus, they project onto the areas 8 to 12 and then area 44 to 47. So from the thalamus, the fibers project onto these areas of the prefrontal lobe. And then the dorsomedial nucleus of the thalamus receive afferents from the posterior hypothalamus. So that's why the impulses which reach the prefrontal lobe via the medial nucleus represent a resultant of hypothalamic and thalamic activity. So this is the impulses which reach the prefrontal lobes via the medial nucleus. They represent a resultant of the hypothalamic and thalamic activity because it receives the afferents from the posterior hypothalamus as well. Then it also receives from the anterior nucleus of the thalamus. This also project onto the cingulate gyrus of the prefrontal lobe. So this is the afferent. And then the prefrontal lobe, it forms a closed circuit connection with the thalamus called the Pepys circuit. So this circuit is responsible for the EEG and also for the emotions. So the prefrontal lobe, it's also form a circuit with the thalamus, that is called the Pepys circuit. So that will be dealt while doing the limbic lobe. So next we'll see the efferent connections, that is the fibers which are coming out of the prefrontal lobe. So the inhibitory areas 24S and then 8S, they discharge to the caudate nucleus. And then frontopontine tract. So the fibers from area 10 pass between the head of the caudate nucleus and the putamen in the anterior limb of the internal capsule to the pontine nuclei and then to the cerebellum. So this is from the frontopontine tract. So from the area 10, so it goes to the pontine nuclei and then to the cerebellum. So next we have the corticotegmental tract. So this is from the area 8 project to the tegmentum of the midbrain. So these are all the efferents from the prefrontal lobe. Then fibers from the area 9 and 10 pass to the ventral and medial thalamic nuclei and to the tegmental reticular formation. So these are the efferents from the prefrontal lobe. And next we have the intercortical connections. So one, that is the fronto-occipital projection, and then the one more is fibers from areas 44 to 47. So the tract which runs back from the frontal eye field in area 8 to area 18 in the occipital lobe. So the importance of this is the proprioceptive impulses from the eye muscles are integrated in area 8, and through this fibers, these data can be correlated with the retinal impressions. So the proprioceptive impulses from the eye muscles are integrated in area 8, and through the fronto-occipital projection these data can be correlated with the retinal impressions. So this is the importance of this fronto-occipital projection. If there is damage to this, it produces object vision hemianopia, that is also called visual agnosia. That is, the nature of the object is not recognized in spite of good vision, because that interpretation in this will be lost. That is fronto-occipital projection. So if there is damage to this, you will see object vision hemianopia. It's also called visual agnosia. That is, the nature of the object is not recognized in spite of good vision. So that is one intercortical connections. And then we have the one more is area fibers from the areas 44 to 47, and this area and occipital area 18 pass into the temporal lobe. So this passes to the temporal lobe, which in turn receives numerous association fibers from most part of the cerebral cortex. So now we'll see the functions of the prefrontal lobe. So as the prefrontal lobe establish connections with the thalamus, hypothalamus and many regions of the cerebral cortex, so this system it's considered as an integrated unit. So the activities of this lobe, this mainly concerned with the ANS control, that is the control of the autonomic nervous system. It controls some of the higher intellectual activities, controls personality, emotional effects, then it controls behavioral and social consciousness, and then responsible for the resting EEG. So these are all the importance of the important functions of the prefrontal lobe. So this is the activities of this prefrontal lobe can be summarized by the following experimental studies on removal or stimulation of the prefrontal areas. So the first one is the alteration of activity. That is, the activities of this area can be summarized, can be known by the following experimental studies. So first one is the alteration of activity. So removal of the prefrontal region, especially area number 13. So what will happen, it causes interruption of projection from area 13 to the hypothalamus. So the first, initially it produces apathy, that is indifference to the surroundings and to anything that would excite interest in normal circumstances. So here what will happen, the animal, it's usually these experiments done on monkeys. So the animal sits with blank expression on the face. It stares into space, ignoring the approach of human beings, and his movements are sluggish. So initially there will be apathy, and then you will see hyperactive state. After some days or weeks there will be hyperactive. So animal is constantly on the move, such as walking continuously or pacing about like a caged lion. So this you will see after few days, and then the movements which you see are without aim, and the animal seems unable to control or check them. So and then sometimes the movements become almost wild in their violence, they disappear during the hours of darkness. They become almost sometimes wild. And then you will see alteration in emotional mental states. That is, you can see the alteration in emotional mental state. So actually monkeys were trained to discriminate between weights. So when they choose the heavier weights correctly, they were suitably rewarded. So this was the experiment done. So while you remove the post central gyrus, this discrimination power was impaired, and the animal finds difficulty in discriminating between the weights. So this you can see in the in this experiment. That is, when you remove the post central gyrus, so what will happen, it unable to discriminate discrimination power. So the discrimination power will be lost. It unable to discriminate between the weights, because the monkeys were trained before doing the experiment. It was trained to identify the different weights, but when you remove the post central gyrus, so it unable to discriminate these weights. So you will see alteration in the emotional mental state. And then you will see alteration in the social behavior. So removal of anterior cingulate gyrus, this abolishes moral sense of right or wrong. So when you remove unilateral or bilateral removal of the anterior part of cingulate gyrus, so this makes the loss of the moral sense of right and wrong. So this also they experimented on monkeys. So experiments done on monkeys, so the monkey lost its shyness and fear of man. So this is also seen in the when there is the damage to the cingulate gyrus. And you will see impairment of memory, and then impairment of learning and intellectual functions. So these are all the effects of the effects of the lesion in the prefrontal lobe. That is the experiments which done on the monkeys. So when you to show the activities in the prefrontal areas. Okay, so now we'll see what will happen in the prefrontal lobectomy. That is the applied aspect. So prefrontal lobectomy in man, unilateral and bilateral. So unilateral causes no impairment of voluntary movements or alteration of muscle tone or reflexes, little change in the personality, whereas bilateral removal causes marked deterioration in the social behavior, especially inability to check the emotions. Then the prefrontal leucotomy in man, that is, it involves cutting the connections between the thalamus and the prefrontal lobe. So most of the prefrontal cortex is put out of action, as the cortical association fibers are relatively few. So this is associated with frontal lobe syndrome. So this you will see the flight of ideas results in difficulty in planning, euphoria, that is sense of a well-being, and failure to realize or indifference to seriousness of other feelings or emotions. Memory will be impaired, lack of initiative, followed by the marked depression of intellectual activity, emotional instability, and then attention and power of concentration lost, and restlessness develops. So all this we'll see when there is connection to the thalamus is lost. So this is about the prefrontal lobe. So and then the frontal lobe, it's already discussed, that is it mainly concerned with the motor cortex and then the premotor cortex. So it's already dealt while doing the descending tracts, that is these are the frontal lobe, that is the precentral gyrus, motor homunculus, and how the different parts of the body are represented. And you know about the premotor cortex, supplementary motor cortex, and what will happen if there is damage to each one. You should know about the frontal eye fields. So these are all the different areas which are present mainly in the prefrontal lobe. So and then you should know about the occipital lobe. So this lies posterior to the parieto-occipital sulcus, areas 17, 18, 19, and then the primary, it's mainly responsible for the primary visual and visual association areas. So this about the important lobes of the cerebrum. And then the remaining lobes, that is the temporal and the limbic lobe, so I will be taking it in the next class. Okay, so thank you. If there is any doubt, you can ask me. Okay, thank you.